Hello everyone, and welcome for being here today at the 5th edition of Learning and Development Conference. We'll be together today for 2 hours, split into sessions, to discuss the hot topics right now in L&D. We'll get to find from our guest panelists which are the news and the trends of learning and development within companies. The event is transmitted live on our platforms, TheDiplomat Bucharest, Facebook and YouTube, as well as on our media partners. Let me thank first Colin, who will moderate the panel, and not the least, thank to all our partners. Diamond partner, Wipro, Gold partners, PricewaterhouseCoopers, ACCA, Wellbeing and partners, Business Performance Consultants, media partners, Outsourcing Today, Automotive Today, Financial Intelligence, Economistul, România Durabilă, Club Economic and Bursa. I will let now Colin to introduce our panelists and the topics to be tackled today. Colin, thank you.
Thank you, Mirella, and a big warm welcome to everybody. I think spring is on its way, so everybody should be in a good mood. I think we have 17 degrees tomorrow, so a wonderful prospect tomorrow. And thank you, Mirella. Now, as Mirella mentioned, this is the 5th in the line of conferences specifically devoted to learning and development. And the 4 previous ones, have really been looking at the current trends and different ways of introducing learning and development and sustaining it within organizations. Now, we all know, I don't need to remind you, that the role of learning and development has pretty much broadened over the last 18 months, I guess, nearly, as L&D managers have had to sort of rethink and in many cases actually recalibrate their approach in continuing to give the right focus and emphasis on learning and development. So there's lots to find out, lots to look forward to and plan for 2021, which we're well into right now, and of course get the best advice possible. If you have any questions, for those of you watching live on this platform here, please put your questions into the Q&A, or you just click on there. For those of you watching on media, whether it's YouTube or Facebook, you can pop some questions in there and the Mirella or the team will pick those up and send those to me. As Mirella mentioned, we have 2 sessions for you today, and we're going to kick off with the first session, which is about closing the gap in leadership roles. And I'm delighted to say we have 3 great experts to help me along the way today. We have Teodora Tordoran, who's the training lead Europe for vPro. So Teo, big warm welcome again to you. Denisa Panaycasiu is, I always pronounce the cashew with caution, PwC's Academy leader in Romania. Denisa, great to see you again. And finally, Roxana Milash, the People Experience Director, Central Eastern Europe for Microsoft. As a warm welcome, and thank you all for helping us to navigate our way through the next hour, which is our first session. And we're going to kick off straight away, really talking about the futures. We talk about skills for the future, and I want to sort of demystify this a bit, if I can, with you 3. I guess you could say about students or thinking right now, if you're a 16 or 17-year-old, what am I going to study at university? What is the jobs or the future? So you could say it's a slightly sort of ambiguous or even confusing time for students, but also for people in the workplace. Teodora, can I come to you first? Tell us a little bit about how you're experiencing this in vPro and how you're sort of seeing in terms of planning for long-term growth and long-term skills.
Thank you, Colin, and thank you for having me here today. Hello to everyone. And like you've mentioned, the topic of the day is closing the gap. I wish we could. Probably we will not be able to. We will just investigate that gap today. When it comes to future skills and how do we prepare for the future? Yes, I think we feel it ourselves as professionals, leaders, not leaders, L&D professionals, but we see that we are lacking a set of skills which are really needed right now and today. So we are trying to propose new ways. Now, to propose the new ways of upskilling the people is first to understand what is missing. And what we see is missing is a blended and a combination of soft skill and technical skills. And if I would have to go back in time, I would probably pay more attention to the informatic class, and not necessarily programming, but kind of get to the point of enjoying to be more technical. Now I would really need that right now. But what we hear coming from the people around us is this emotional resilience, which is a soft skill, and it's a very, touching emotional element, combined with the coldness of technology and the need of merging these two together. So I would say that is our focus right now. How do we, marry these two and make them a common sense project? So when they grow with both equally much and to create sense into applying them. So
okay.
I hope that.
No, that's interesting you say that, and I love how you mentioned the coldness of technology. I'm sure there's a few tech people out there saying cold. It's a warm thing, but I know exactly what you mean. Denisa, let's come to you on this subject. Leaders sort of looking forward, and Theodora sort of painted the picture there that there's this tandem approach that we really need to take the emotional and the technical and kind of bring them together. Whereas I guess in the past they have been fairly separated. What's happening in your world with PwC?
Well, and I won't say something new, I'm sure, but I think now it's more important than ever. Continuing on the idea of the tandem, I would invite you to see also in terms of the different levels of people in the organization. And so one of the first initiatives that we took was to put our leadership team through a whole process of emotional intelligence assessment and development and coaching, because of course they give the tone, and you can have monthly webcasts and so on to the entire organization, but it really depends how you do that, and the tone that you give there is really going to make a difference for the whole emotional climate. Of course, there's the daily things that you need to deal with, and then so basically in the way that we approach things in PwC, we were kind of trying to cover all of the levels in the organization. So there's a lot of learning bites in that direction, supporting people on the spot with what they need, creating learning communities where they can actually work collaboratively on, okay, I have this issue, I don't know how to do it. So there's much more agility that is needed, I think. And I totally support what Theo said. And I think it's really important that the top leaders realize it's not just about educating everyone else in the organization. It's about, role modeling this, whether it's about digital, emotional, and everything else.
It's interesting you say, being in Romania for 12 years, when I first came here, so short evolution, if you like. When I first came here, there was very much this sort of task orientation, and it was a manager, and not so much emotion being displayed. It was more, serious. Let's be serious about our jobs. And what you're saying is, hey guys, we need to loosen up a little bit and bring that emotion in there. Roxanne, I want to bring you in here because Denisa was touching there about leadership, and we keep using the word leadership, and I'm quite interested in your experiences at Microsoft, and I think Denise was kind of touching on it there, that sometimes I guess the definition of a leader can be confused by the leaders themselves, because a team leader doesn't see themselves in the same way as the CEO. Well, maybe is that wrong? Should they, and should this whole sort of process be touching everybody who's a leader of 2 people, 100 people, 500 people? How are you managing this at Microsoft?
Thank you, everyone, for being here, and thank you for the invitation. Calling back to your questions, the way we see it, and I will get back to the leadership point in a second, is that the global labor markets are going through some major transformations, and we all have seen it. And it's not only the last year, but the last years. And if I look at some data from World Economic Forum, it says that 54% of the employees will require significant reskilling and upskilling. Yet, the skills gap is growing 10 times more in the last 4 years. And where we are looking at, actually, back to Theodora's point, to this blended combination of skills between soft and hard, whereas actually LinkedIn Learning, which is one of the platforms that we are using extensively in Microsoft, has done extensive surveys at the end of 2020 to understand a little bit what are the 5 soft skills and what are the top hard skills. And you would see how creativity, persuasion, influencing, collaboration, adaptability, and something quite new, emotional intelligence, are combined with things like blockchain, cloud computing, analytical reasoning, artificial intelligence, and just to say one more, the user experience design. And I think back to your leadership point, I think the leaders would have, all leaders, and everyone can be a leader. This is the Microsoft philosophy that all of us can be leaders, irrespective of the hierarchy, have a role, because together, what these people can do is to create a learning organization. Because this is our thinking that only with a learning organization, we will be able to push the agenda of learning further and close this skill gap that we are talking about.
Okay. So just on this definition of leadership, or the definition of a manager, going back to my point of the incredibly fast evolution I've seen in the way that let's still call them managers, which I guess is a clue to my next question, is really, is that role changing with this? When we want to clearly be transparent and define leadership, do we as a consequence have to kind of demystify this word manager, which historically, as an honorary Romanian now, I can say historically was a very different person to the manager now. So is this time with this wonderful evolution to take away the word manager and redefine them altogether?
I believe so. If you ask me, I think the managers will still be there. Just that, and they will exist in the formal way. Just that their role has changed. So they are no longer the ones holding the information or the power or the knowledge. Actually, if they position themselves in enablers, in people who are helping, supporting, serving their people, then I think this is the new definition of the managers as we see it and as we look at it.
Okay, Theo, I'm gonna come back to you as we sort of, Roxana mentioned there about upskilling and reskilling. They're not new definitions, but they're kind of more relevant now than they ever were as people are transitioning through their careers. So in my day, talking like the old man, it was kind of a job for life, and you knew where you were going in your career. Now, it's a kind of very different situation, which can be unnerving, can be upsetting, and can have an impact on loyalty and commitment as well, I guess, in some way. So Theo, in terms of reskilling and upskilling, how does that work? Not just in vPro, but your advice for people out there. And what about handling that kind of that reluctance as well to it, that, you know, for people to suddenly change, you know, I spent 6 years studying to be an accountant, and now you want me to go into the marketing department? Are you kidding? How can we manage that as well? I think you've got 2 questions there.
I have a lot to say. Stop me, please. We have the same question, and first I'm going to start with the view that we have in Vipro. We have just generated and created a new program and a new project, which is the redefinition of the training department. And we call it the TT because it's talent transformation, the way we call ourselves, 3.0. We go into the new version of ourselves, where we actually took the complete employee journey from day one to the rest of their lives with us. And we are rethinking not just upskilling and reskilling, but how is the entire journey for them? What are we looking at? What is the capability building we should map? We should map it to the role. We should map it maybe to the, I don't know, the career band and the level that they are with. So the entire upskilling is not just a silo in the story of the training. It's a journey, it's a roadmap, which we call roadmap for growth, where we define touch points that they have to come across in their career to say, okay, you've reached this level. Now, whether we will decide to go with, I don't know, points or credit points or something else to give back something, whether it is a certificate, an external program with Denisa, we have quite a nice collaboration, I have to say. So all these are still in the making. We do have some plans, and we already have rolled out some of the initiatives. First of all was to redesign our internal materials, to put them online and to have the same impact, which luckily for us was even greater than expected and even more accepted with a wider reach than just the local teams. So that was great. Till now we've done perfectly fine, but it's not enough. So the upskilling and reskilling goes from 2 ways. One is for the audience, for the internal clients we have, our colleagues, but for us as well. How do we upskill and reskill and keep up with the pace and to bring relevant information and wisdom to their needs? So I think just to wrap it up, it's still in the making. We are still testing our powers and muscles. Are we there yet? Are we okay with what we are proposing? And I think we're doing a great job, but it's not in a final stage. And I wish it doesn't get in a final stage soon, because there's still more to come. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you're going to tell us about it at the next conference, because then it'll be up and running and well. But just a question for that, because I'm curious. You know, I mentioned the word reluctance. I could say the word resistance. I could say the word sort of indifference or misunderstandings or whatever. I guess one of the greatest challenges, and really I'm asking for your advice for the listeners out there, or the viewers, I should say, is, you know, how do you, I guess you're transitioning through that now, but any advice for people on how you get the buy-in as leaders to people doing that? Because I guess the first suspicious thought is, yes, you know, if I may say Vipro, they're doing this to make me work better and therefore they will benefit. But I think what you're actually doing is the other way around. You're saying, look, we're going to develop you as individuals, and consequently Vipro will benefit. Is I guess that you're going to say, yes, it's exactly how it is.
It's that, and more to that, I have to say that we are not really promoting ourselves. Look what we are doing for you. This is what you'll get from us. There are, you know, people which are positive from the beginning and they want to attend some of the classes, whether it is an e-learning platform that we are promoting or whatever, presentation skills topic. Once they go in and they see the benefit, our work it's half done. They start talking about it. So recently, which was new for me, and that's why I'm saying we are on a good trend, we are going where we should, but it's not there yet. People are coming to us saying, I want to attend that class. And if before we have put a cap saying your eligibility criteria to attend this training was, I don't know, you have to be a leader, you have to have this. Now we are getting requests on changing our criteria of attending a session because they want to be there. We are not pushing it. They want, because someone said it's a nice program, so let me go there too. So this is a good sign. Obviously, not everything is so perfect and nice. We do have still programs where we are struggling a little bit because they are mandatory and this has to happen.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I see a lot of openness, and people, anyway, they have to be at work. So if there's no work to be done, the question is, what do I do for myself? And this is what's what's happening right now. They are at home, they have time, they have free internet, and we have a, I don't know, partnership with some external vendor which are curating information for us. They simply get a link, log in, and do themselves the curricula that they consider is relevant for them, and they attend those classes as they wish and what they believe it's useful for them. We put that platform to their benefit and to their access, but they can choose whatever is good for them.
Okay, interesting. And I can sense by the way that you're talking, you're very confident about how it's evolving. So congratulations you specifically and your team. So it's I guess it's growing pains. And I was to say no pain, no gain. So I'm sure that you get there, but it's quite interesting. Denisa, just on this subject, I want to sort of touch on this with you. Without getting controversial in today's world of political correctness, but I'm kind of curious from being a teacher myself at the university, but also a trainer and a lecturer and whatever else I am. I sometimes see a difference between male and female in terms of the way that they look at learning and development, the way they adopt it, and more importantly, the way that they stick to it. Is that still a challenging way? You notice I'm leaving the opinion wide open for you to underline it if you wish to, but is there a difference in terms of training people? And if there is, what do we need to do? If it's the ladies or it's the gentlemen, what can we do? Or where are we on it?
I am completely blown away by your question. I completely did not expect that. I actually haven't sensed that, and I don't have that feedback from the internal L&D that we collaborate with quite a lot. So we don't have feedback so much in a difference in terms of taking up learning and applying learning, the level of enthusiasm, so much in terms of gender. I think sometimes there are differences depending more on the generation and maybe more on the position and the perceived responsibility of people in those roles. Like Roxana was mentioning earlier on about enablers and about the learning organization. I think that the whole context that we've been living in the past year, whether you liked it or not, sooner or later, you pretty much had to accelerate your learning. And of course, the more the organization could facilitate that and guide you through and give you access and give you freedom to take, but also to contribute, then that's great. And of course, there's lots of platforms that can make that possible. We used to have quite a lot of tools and platforms in PwC, but I think it was only when this context happened that we started promoting them more, that people started asking more about them, and we are really taking the value of it. The fact that everyone can be a contributor, that if I'm a manager of a team of 10 people, I can create a playlist in our platform, which includes articles and e-learns and anything else. So in terms of what we received from our clients, a lot of people are moving as well more to the agile kind of culture, whether it's specific agile methodology or more agile, not so much as a noun, but as an adjective, in doing things faster and more feedback loops in the organization. So to tell you the truth, I really, if there was something like a different approach by men and women, I really don't see that anymore. I mean, we have had, we created, for example, a parenting community, and we created frequent meetings where people just share. It's kind of like, you ventilate, and then on the spot, guys, I have this issue. I have no idea how to get my kids out of the house. I've tried this and this and this, and everyone's contributing. And you'll be surprised to hear that, okay, maybe 40% were men. I think we usually had less men in those, but they were really active. And I think that was the most extreme example that I could give. But in terms of actual learning, we have very balanced participation from outside of the organization, inside in our groups.
Okay.
So the short answer, Colin, is no.
Well, do you know, I ambushed you with that question, and you answered it in your usual eloquent and very politically correct way, but an honest way there, Denisa. But I guess I'm going to ambush you with another one based on that, really. So what? But so so what you're saying, it's kind of neutral, this whole thing, which is good news. That's a great answer, and that's great news. But what advice would you give to people or leaders when there is that little bit of reluctance from an individual, regardless of what gender they are? Is there an approach to that? And don't worry, I'm not going to ambush you on this. I may throw it open to the other two. But what advice would you give to people in terms of managing that situation?
If I was to answer in one word, that would be coaching. To expand a little bit on that, okay. For people who may have different interpretations of coaching, coaching can be very many things. One of those things is to broaden the awareness. And if a leader, is having a coaching approach to someone who is losing their motivation or who cannot see the point of doing something, or through coaching, they can explore, okay, what is it that's stopping you? Is there maybe a belief that is blocking you in that way and that is not supporting the entire team? There's different approaches. So you can look for what is blocking them. You can look for a dissonance of values or not seeing the point. So there's a responsibility first to communicate clearly to those people what the benefits are, as well as the expectations. And then if that is clear, to explore in a way that you don't actually give the answer, in a way that you seek and you help your partner in conversation to find that answer and realize, okay, so why don't I really want to do this? What is stopping me? What's the point? So what else do I need? Am I meeting my expectations without it? If I am, then the leader must ask themselves this question, do I really need to push this? It also depends on the level of competence, of autonomy that everyone has. So I think there's a lot of things that can come together, but through a coaching approach that really explores respectfully and widens the awareness, you have much more chance of getting to the bottom of it and then dealing with it.
Okay, good. Another good answer. Thank you very much. And I guess your magical two words, emotional intelligence, comes into play on that. Roxana, anything to sort of add from your side of things? Any extra advice? I guess we were talking there. I think Denisa, you would actually talk, or I can't remember, was you or Theo was talking about getting groups together, and I think it was you, Denisa, getting groups together, and which is, I was going to use the word therapy in a kind of a joking way, but I guess with all the emotional stuff that's coming in, we're also having a little bit of therapy sessions. Roxana, I guess all that leaders are showing that empathy and having these sessions and showing that, look, it's not like the old days when I say, how are you? It's actually, how are you? I really care about this. Is that part of what advice you would give, Roxana, to people out there to get people to buy in and embrace their own personal learning and development?
I think Denisa raised a great point about the coaching, and you are also building on that and mentioning this empathy of the leaders to be able to have those conversations with their people. A great way, if I may add another perspective, another great way of understanding how the others are feeling and overcoming potential resistance they may have is to test it on ourselves. And as leaders, as L&D professionals, I think sometimes it will be very much worth to experiment what does it mean upskilling or reskilling, because you cannot talk and preach learning unless you have understood what it means for yourself. You can be a role model, and that's why I would encourage all of you in the call to test it out, to see what reskilling means. And let me give you a personal example, if I may. because working for Microsoft, which is a deeply technology company, for a long time I was having in my mind what would mean to be a little bit more technical, and my background is sociology and economics, and hence being surrounded by all these technical people, I've always been curious to understand them more. So this December, I decided that I will go for Azure Fundamental Certification, Azure being our cloud solution. Yes. And Microsoft is pretty demanding in terms of the certification. I mean, you need to take 70 points out of the 100 to pass, and you start from 0, not like in school that you get already the 4. So if you get 50 points, you didn't pass. To say that preparing for this cloud training was difficult would be an understatement. I felt that I'm challenged every moment of the journey. And when finally I managed to go through it, I looked back and I realized I've realized some things. And my learnings were that, okay, reskilling, because upskilling, I think it's much easier. Yes, you learn something in your function. Reskilling, you learn something outside of your function. It took me 60% more time investment that my other colleagues. Meaning, it took me 50 hours to pass this exam. My colleagues would take it. My technical colleagues would get it in 30 hours maximum. I realized that I was in a position to give up so many times. I said, this is impossible. It's not for me. Why am I doing this? And to find that inner motivation to go through. And it made me think that if we want reskilling, we need to understand what's the other people's motivation. How can we spark and light up that motivation? And the other thing that helped was having a mentor, a moral support. I have a technical colleague who was there to encourage me, to help me, to cheer for me before the exam, and that also made a difference. It helped me to develop empathy. Now, as L&D professional, if I'm thinking of reskilling and having experienced it on my own, I'm looking at the whole process with different eyes.
Wow! Well, congratulations on your transition, and it's good advice for people to really, completely turn everything on its head in terms of your skilling. I guess we can have the blended skill, just improving on existing skills, or do what you've done, which was pretty fundamental. I'm going to lean forward a little bit because of my eyesight, but we've had it's not so much a question, but from Irina Bodizatu, I think. Not really she says, not really a question, but mostly a perspective on the gender differences when it comes to influencing towards learning. Would be relevant to go back to the why and see if it's different by genders. For example, recommending something to a female leader as a remedial intervention and to the male leader a growth opportunity, or the other way around. Theo, before I'm going to ambush you because I can't do it again to Denisa, but do you want to just comment on that, and then I want to get on to the next subject, which is really about managing people, which is another challenge in this new hybrid remote world. Have I ambushed you?
Yes. No, it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. To me, just like Denisa mentioned, I don't see any difference. And the suggestion that we have received in the chat is it's an option. It's another option. Obviously, whether it is gender, role, level, experience, doesn't really matter. You would anyway have to tailor your approach to the person in front of you. That's all I would say. Doesn't really matter what's beyond that.
Okay.
It's just a human being, another human being that has specific needs, different needs, and we should be, Roxana was mentioning adaptability. I think that's a skill that comes handy at that point.
Okay.
And I wouldn't really stress so much on the gender difference. We don't see it, we don't encourage it, we actually take it as a normality, total normality.
Wow. But changing times, I think, Theo, isn't it?
Yeah.
we wouldn't have had this conversation probably 10 years ago. It would have been a different world. So it's amazing that in such a short space of time, this whole thing about gender has become irrelevant. It doesn't matter who you are, what you are, how old you are, how young you are. There's this, it's really about your attitude and your approach to life and work, and that's the key. While you're still there, Theo, let's sort of change subjects slightly, well, very, very slightly, in terms of remote working, and if you are a manager, a leader, or a coach, whatever word we wish to use, the challenges of that. We are with less and less human interactions. We've used the word therapy twice, I think. But what is the reality of this? We're hearing very different sort of views from different areas. Some leaders are saying, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, my people, I trust them, everything's good. And then we hear others say, no, I know they're working because I've got a little monitor on their laptop. And other people having different views. What is it, firstly, obviously from a vPro perspective, but again, what's your advice out there in terms of remote leadership and how we can make it better?
Yeah, I was recently outside vPro working on an article on leadership and rethinking leadership during COVID and after that. So I was talking to one of the banking leaders, and he said something which since then I only think of this. Since the lockdown and work from home setup, you got to see kind of an X-ray between the doers and the not doers. It became so easy. If before it was, I don't know what to say, these guys are engaged or not. No, now it's clear. You know exactly who's doing the job, and you know exactly who's not doing the job, or maybe doing the job but not making noise about it. So you still have to put some extra effort to get to the root of that. So in terms of the realities that we are facing right now, it all made sense after that. I thought, yes, this is it. Even within my team, I have brilliant people, but completely silent, not saying anything, just doing their job. And then I don't know, have they done their job or not? What do I do now? And then you have to spend extra time to figure it out. Thank God, everything is fine. And then you have the doers, which not only do their job, but now with the new context, it's a lot more to do in reality. I feel that we do work more than before, a lot more hours spent in front of the computer, which is probably giving the emotion and the sensation that we work more because it's a different way of, I don't know, we feel tired in a different way, mentally more, I would say. So my advice or my perception of what do we need to do as leaders right now in this context? First of all, I think we should figure out what are the challenges that we are facing. What am I seeing? And what is, like, Denisa was mentioning. So is this serving my purpose? Yes, no, do I want to go to, is this a problem for me? If no, then everything is fine. So I think there's not one single recipe and there's not a pill, take this one and you'll be the best leader from now on, that you're done, you're fixed. I think it's an ongoing journey, and the way to be in your right shoes at the right moment is to just keep your antennas open and be open and adaptable to each and every situation. Now more than ever, as a leader, it's not about giving the command, expecting the result. That's not going to work. It's more about being there for the people, understanding the needs, figuring out if it's a not doer because he doesn't talk or because he doesn't do, what is there. But at least it's giving a way clearer perspective of how is my team? What is the energy there? What personalities do I have? Because before in an office setup, it was mixed and it was foggy from that sense. Now it's different. So I would first say, be very present, understand their needs before you put your own agendas in front, and then you just send it out. Dear team, this is what we need to do. No, first of all, understand who is your team, individually team members, and then create a new setup of working if that's needed. So I would say a completely different approach from task delegation, the way we communicate, the way we talk with individuals. Everything is new and it's brilliant.
It's brilliant, and I guess you're painting not a perfect picture, but you're painting the ideal picture. The advice that you've just given is the best advice. But let's sort of look at the reality as well. You know, there are, if I can call them managers out there. You know, I know a few out there who would listen to you and say, bah, no, Theo, for me, it's this is why I have a monitor, because I don't trust my people. So what is it? Is it a reactive thing that we have to deal with, or should we actually spend a bit more time with those managers, helping them to understand how to build empathy and trust with your team, and will they have the patience to be reskilled and upskilled themselves? And I'm going to ask Denisa exactly the same question afterwards. So.
I recently came across some of the Simon Sinek's, you know, he has a lot of sayings, and one of his was, everybody can be a parent, but not everybody should.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a bit tough, but I like it and I love it, because we do come across leaders, rather managers, that are there because it happened so. There was nobody else. They were good technically. They have all the domain knowledge and thousands of other reasons, but people skills. And that's where, since October, we are running some leadership classes within Wipro, and 60 plus leaders have been running in various batches, and we do come across very often the resistance, the lack of adaptability. They are trying hard. I'm not saying they don't want this, but this will not work. What if it doesn't work? And you know, everything is going back to the same routine. Now, the answer to that is maybe they are not meant to be parents, and that's a different conversation, and that's at the corporate level that needs to be flagged, discussed, maybe when to go to the upper level or with the HR, depending on the company and the structure, how these things are being handled, or simply be patient and work with them in a different way. And back to Denisa's point, coaching, that is I think the word of the day. That's the pill. That's the magic pill. But it comes in different shapes for different people.
Okay, Denisa's waiting to come in, but Denisa, before you do, and you're going to hate me for this, I'm going to remodel the question a little bit, because based on what Theo's saying there's a certain sort of exposing of people, managers, through this process. There's some that can adapt to what Theo very, very nicely described as, it's kind of describing the ideal manager for 2021. You know, I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that. But what you're saying is, and Denisa, what Theo's saying is, you know, we are going to expose. I used to call it the Maradona syndrome. You know, where you had somebody who was great at their job. You know, he was one of the greatest footballers in the world, and then they made him a manager, and it was an absolute disaster. I've said this before, I know, and I'm talking about the same thing here. So that's something for you to. I know you had a point as well, Denisa. So make that point, but just for a touch on that, and then I'm going to ask Roxana. I'm going to ambush Roxana because she hasn't been ambushed yet. So Denisa.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to try to extract the question.
Okay.
The point that I wanted to make, actually, I would invite you to introduce another layer into this perception of the leaders and what leaders need in order to be good leaders. And this is actually coming from a study that we performed with a lot of our clients for different levels, but quite a lot at top level. And the layer is about well-being, because and I can talk about lower layers as well. For example, first-time managers generally have an issue to move their focus towards the people from the task, and they still kind of 80% of the time still have tasks to do and only give a little bit of time to managing people. And they need more support in order to learn how to do that, to build the habit. Now there's increasing pressure at every level. So that pressure is actually pushing a lot of people to not take breaks, to feel overly responsible for both performance, for both people, and it can be super overwhelming, you know, because now it takes more time to be close to your team. They need more support. Maybe you have a need of control that you need to communicate to them more often than they need. At the same time, the layer that I'm proposing, and one that came out of our own research, was the importance of really helping people self-manage, and self-manage not just emotionally, but when it comes to their sleep, to their eating habits, to everything. And by inviting them to give themselves those mini recovery sessions, even if it's just, making sure that you don't set your meetings for an hour and you set them for 50 minutes, so that you have some break in between where you get up from the desk, you have an apple, or you have some water, or anything, or simply you have some thinking time, rather than, just jumping from one meeting to another. But one layer that we thought was really important, and we have a big initiative in PwC about that, is called Be Well, Work Well. And it was actually the hardest to get on board the top leaders. But eventually they started to do that, and you could see where they did. So I think there's an increasing need of creating more awareness, which you can create through coaching, you can create through sharing stories in the company, through communication, and simply letting people know what is available, and so on. So, because earlier on you were talking about the people who are maybe more silent. When it comes to that, we also had some initiatives where people could join in, and they didn't have to show themselves, they didn't have to say anything, but they had a guided process, whether it was mindfulness, meditation, a self-coaching tool. Okay, I'm dealing with stress, how do I deal with that? And that was really useful to address different audiences in different styles. And even though, I don't feel maybe comfortable to share for various reasons, only seeing that there's over 100 or 200 people in that mindfulness call, or in that dealing with, I don't know, panic attacks, or dealing with challenging people, etc. When you see that there's so many people there, you think, okay, so this is important for quite a lot. So I'm not the only one facing this, but I don't have to share my story if I don't feel comfortable. So coming back and trying to kind of sum it up, the layer I invite everyone to consider, irrespective of the level that you have, but the more pressure that you have, the more I recommend it, is your own well-being. And I will give you just a short analogy. If you think of top athletes, top sports people in any kind of sport, the higher the level of performance that they have, the higher the level of discipline, religious discipline for their own health. So how much they sleep and what they eat influences their performance considerably. It actually influences our own performance as well. It's just that we don't have that ritual, and the higher we are, the more pressure we have, the less we pay attention to these things. And what came out of our study is that, that is actually a lot of the times the place to start. Because, and I won't get into the whole science of it, there's plenty of research supporting it, but this is one of the things that I would very much bring to everyone's attention. And there's so many ways of doing this. Every single act will count, whether it's the manager sharing some articles, whether it's an initiative in the company, it doesn't matter. Anything you can do in that direction and help people to improve their well-being. The basic things, the free things, how much time I sleep, how much time I take to walk. I can do that wearing a mask. Anyway, I'm getting carried away.
No, it's a really good advice that you're giving. This sort of self-management is probably as managers as everybody is in some sort of way. Probably the hardest thing to manage is ourselves. Great bit of advice, by the way, about when you do have a meeting, a 2 o'clock meeting, don't book the next one at 3 o'clock unless you know you're going to have a 10-minute breather in between to gather your thoughts. And there's some really good advice there. Roxana, I want to sort of take a little bit there what Denise has said, because she's kind of touching about the groups that there's a little bit of this sort of the sociability thing, taking Robert Cialdini's sort of principles in there, that if everybody else is doing it, it must be the right thing to do. So that's quite powerful. So just finally on this subject about managing, is also is supporting people within the teams in terms of, I don't mean peer pressure, but peer influence as well. So if it's being programmed that Denise is touching on, is pick out one or two of your people there to influence from a sideways perspective. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It makes total sense. And, these informal leaders, as we called them earlier, have always had a significant role. If I'm thinking of Microsoft, I think one way to go about learning in connection to what you just mentioned is to integrate learning at all levels of the organization. And what we have noticed is that when executives are recommending, for example, an online training, or we have Bill Gates recommending sometimes 5 books of the year, there's huge traction. Our people following that and joining those trainings, reading those books, commenting on those books, and sharing the learning with the community. This is one avenue that we are using. Another one is that looking at performance, the conversations that we are having, those have been adjusted, and we are spending more than 1/3 of the time of those performance conversations talking about the learning. So, and this has become like a regular one-to-one conversation between the manager and the people, where no longer we look at the performance, but we look at performance and learning, and as they are equally important. And that's the message that people are getting. And back to the point that you mentioned about peers, we are recognizing, we are awarding, we are celebrating those people who are fast in advancing their learning. And for that matter, obviously the others are watching and making their thinking what matters, what's valued, what's promoted. And many times they get inspired as well and in a position to follow.
Interesting. I like the celebrating part of it as well. I guess there's that little bit of I don't think there's such a word, but we say gamification. I don't think the word actually exists in the Oxford English Dictionary, but I guess that's the thing, is making it fun.
Now it is.
And fun and everything else. Okay, we're moving on into the last sort of 10 minutes of this session, and I want to touch on one more subject, if I may, and it's really about evaluating which job roles will become permanently remote. Theodora, I'm going to come back to you on this subject, and I think it's becoming a sensitive subject. I actually wrote an article on this not so long ago about a report that said that, it was a report by McKinsey, I think, that said that the problem with remote working is that the people who have the ability and flexibility to work remotely, or a hybrid way of working, their reports said that tended to be higher paid jobs. And the ones who have more restrictions and inability to have a flexible working condition are people in the lower paid jobs. I don't have the report, so I can't give the explanation of that, but it could be a growing them and us social divide happening in organizations. But is there becoming a list of the common jobs that would be now remote working and those that are not, or mixture, or permanently, or where are we? This is becoming a therapy session. Where are we?
If I will have to go with your article, then I'll apply for permanently work from home, considering that will change my salary.
Okay.
Because so it seems, right? So does the article say. Well, in our case, I don't think it's linked to the seniority of the role, or
okay.
It's from what we hear, and it's not a promise, it's not a future perspective, it's not, we don't know. But what we know is that probably for the rest of the year till September, at least, what we call support functions in our organization. So whether it is training, HR, admin, finance, even IT at times, they will probably tend to be moving slowly, permanently into a work from home version. From time to time, like today, I'm in office because I wish and I want and I miss office, but it's not required. Not to mention that training nowadays, we always thought before, leadership training without a classroom and the physical presence will never work. That's just not going to work. Now, since March last year, we only have soft skill sessions via online, virtually with instructors and everything, and it's working fine. So I would not even see the point of coming back and only having an impact on a limited set of people that are in office at that point. I would still keep it, and also our programs and workshops and engagement activities have been redesigned so that they fit this context. And they are very with breakout rooms and everything, so it's just perfect for us in terms of L&D. Now, the rest of the functions will probably continue in the work from home scenario with, from time to time, we have also run surveys within the organization trying to identify not only what we recommend, but what is the preference, what would the colleagues, employees want to have in the future. And it's a blended model that they wish, not to mention that it's also a blended model that we would like to offer and we would consider as a workable solution. In other words, unless our customers are not demanding or having a contractual paragraph saying you have to be in the office physically, we don't see any reason, regardless of the band seniority, why to bring people 100% back in office for the long run.
Okay, it's interesting. It's an interesting point. It's almost a controversial point, Denisa, I guess, because that people are still having differing views on it. What's it from your perspective? Theo sort of touching there about choice, giving people the choice of doing what they want to do. Again, I go back to the ideal world. That is the ideal world. I think everybody needs to go and work for vPro. You have the ideal world going on there, but in the real world, Denisa, what are the challenges going forward on this, and are we recognizing and adjusting to what employees want, or is it still what's best for the company philosophy? What are you seeing out there in the big wide world?
I support Theo's idea of choice, and it's not just me. I think that is the general approach in PwC as well. And we were fortunate enough to be already quite ahead on our corporate learning culture, and all the IT infrastructure allowed us to just move to work from home immediately. So you said challenges, and should we adjust to what people say, or should we focus on what the organization wants? It's obviously a balance that you need to find. But I think that, remember in the previous few years, we kept talking about we're running out of people. There's no more people that we can hire. And so, of course, you need to make sure that you provide an experience to those people that is motivating them, that is respecting them, and really ask the question about the relevance. How relevant is it that they come to the office? Of course, there are benefits for the organizations to maybe have less floors, less space used. Based on a barometer that our colleagues have been running quite on a constant basis in the past 6 months, I think, the tendency is generally from the companies. We basically surveyed people from the companies to tell us about their approach to remote work. The tendency is to kind of give the choice to come maybe 2 weeks to the office, 2 weeks to stay at home, or to give people the choice of how often they want to do it. And I think a lot of companies are running internal surveys and really cannot do anything without taking that into account.
Yeah. Okay. We're running out of time, Roxana. You're going to have the final word on this, but I have to say I did read something last week in the UK and we're going to talk about, and by the way, Cosmina, thank you very much for your question. I'm going to throw that at the next panel, so I'm going to ambush them so everybody feels happy here. But I read about a new job emerging, was a pet therapist, because they're saying that many pets have got used to their owners being at home working. Now they're going back to work, some of them. The dog, the cat, or in my case, the little rabbit, is starting to get stressed out. So there's a good job opportunity if anybody's looking for a career change. Maybe that'll be something that will grow. Roxana, final word from you on this.
What we are looking at the moment, we are working from home 100% for more than 1 year across the globe. What we are actually defining as and looking to go to hybrid workplace. And what we mean by that is that people will choose where they work from home, and it's going to be a choice of the people if they want to come to work or work from home, if they want to change the location of the city in which they are living, if they want to change the part-time, full-time, if they want to change the country where they're residing. And this is a big huge project that we are looking at to implement, and we have announced it already to people. And also back to this remote work, for what we see, it's a lot of pressure on people, and we just announced that we're going to give 5 well-being days for this year, for people to have time to
recover
and be back in shape.
Wow. Well, I guess we started by touching on empathy and care, and we're finishing on that subject as well. So I guess, that's been the message on this session is, leadership has changed. It is changing very rapidly, and we need people to adjust to that and be prepared to, sometimes we have to take 1 step back to take 2 forward, and that could be involved in learning. And we're going to touch more on sort of reskilling and everything else in the second session. But for now, I have to say a big thank you, Theodora, Denisa, and Roxana. Thank you very much indeed for your insights. I do believe that many of the insights are going to be sort of gathered together and probably be in the next edition of Diplomat, or on the website anyway. I'm sure Morella will correct me on that. But for the time being, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the ambush.
Yeah, you see, she's never going to forgive me. She's never going to forgive me. So
okay, I like it.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Well, that was really enlightening. I love moderating these things because I always learn something myself. So thank you. I can say thank you, ladies, for that. I can't say thank you, ladies, to the next group because we've got a gentleman in the panel for the second session, ladies and gentlemen, which is about addressing the changing nature of work. Most of organizations are now transitioning or fully embrace the virtual work environments and even created a fully operating remote work ecosystem. The shift to more virtual offerings has highlighted even more in 2020 the gaps in IT and other technical skills. This means that as part of the process of a changing work perspective, companies and employees need to secure an effective processing of upskilling and reskilling at a wider scale. So we kind of touched on the theory of it earlier on, really getting into the detail of this. The World Economic Forum estimates that 50% of employees will need to be reskilled by 2025. I think it's a bit late for me, although I am reskilling myself, but it's quite a major statistic. And to tackle some of these subjects, I'm delighted to say we've got 4 panelists on the second session, and some old friends as well. So talking of which, we got Andreas Stanciu, who's the head of ACCA Southeastern Europe at the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. That's a wonderful job title, Andrea. Roxana Shaban, who's the talent coach And there's a lot of VP, IWIN, EMEA, I know what that means. And I know what ADP means because that's who you work for. So Roxana, a big warm welcome to you. This is a gentleman that I'm going to have a slight dislike to because I've said when we spoke, we met before, he has far too many vowels, and English people with Romanian names with lots of vowels in them really struggle. So I'm going to just say Florin Iordacoiu, I think. So Florin, from now onwards, you're just Florin. I'm not going to call you anything else. So we're Learning and Development Manager with Orange Romania. Florin, a big warm welcome to you, my friend. And finally, Mirella Bocca, the Community Manager, Avocado by Best Job. So 4 great brains and to give us lots of advice. So a big warm welcome to you. And let's really sort of kick off on this subject. So we'll talk about applying new ways of learning with surprising outcomes, which is kind of an interesting title for it. You know, extraordinary times call for extraordinary people, I guess, and new approaches. The previous year revealed and pushed towards new ways of reaching the objectives on learning and development, and leaders of departments face interesting and revealing challenges in delivering their ideas and projects at all levels across the companies. The success of their endeavors will be more and more visible and useful in the years to come. So we're kind of looking at the evolution as we touched in the first session, but maybe looking at some practical examples of this. Florin, I'm going to come to you first on this, if I may, and really sort of look at the practical examples of L&D programs that maybe you've got in your organization, and then the new tech-based tools that are being discovered to sort of help things along the way, bearing in mind that not all of us are tech savvy. As we heard in the first session, somebody went on a course to actually learn about cloud. So, Florin, a big warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much, Colin. Thank you so much, Mirella. I'm really honored to be part of this event. And to be honest, I'm a bit envious on the first part of the discussion because you were present there as an active actor. And I saw a very fruitful and insightful discussion. So back to your question now, indeed, last year, let's say, and this year as well, but starting last year, learning and development was a lot about technology, was a lot about adaptation. And here I'd mention just some information that I'd like to share from Orange, from the organization that I'm part of. We were really interested last year seeing the changes in context to understand the expectations of our people towards learning, and I'll just pinpoint some numbers here. So a quarter of employees in the first part of the pandemic, so when the crisis was as acute as possible, mentioned learning as a major tool for them to be able to go through the crisis in good conditions. This was really interesting to us because it revealed something that could be, let's say, ignored in the first place. So the preposition, people were aware that they would go through the crisis, not over the crisis. And this was really interesting because we understood that people really want to take the experience of the crisis, learn out of it, indeed, leave the pain of it because it was not easy, but they were aware and decided to actually do that. So that was a powerful signal to us. And maybe one more thing that I'd mention here was that we understood that people would really love to become agents of learning. 74% of our employees declared that they would encourage their colleagues to constantly develop by learning new things. So this actually took us to a project because you were asking about solutions and learning programs that we would put into practice. This led us to a program that we call Learning Experts at Orange, which consists of very good people in various fields in Orange, but also wanting to be able to transfer knowledge and expertise to their colleagues. So we managed to put a community together to engage it into delivering monthly sessions to their colleagues. And right now, this is a very powerful engine in terms of learning. If you allow me, I just give you one more thing when it comes to applying new technologies. To be really honest, we understood that, you know, technology is here around us, digital learning is here around us, but there is one more risk present with us, or there is one risk, not one more risk, one risk present with us. The thing that we could be very much transfer old habits into new practices. And here I just want to come in your defense. You were saying that maybe you're not very technological and so on and so forth, but let's be honest, we all needed some training in WebEx, Zoom, Teams, and so on and so forth.
Not I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, indeed. Actually, you're the trainer, huh? Not to be able to use them, but actually to be able to adapt our activity, to adapt our learning content to the conditions of this technology. And this was something really, really important, because actually what we needed to do is to start reshape and redesign the learning content, so to make it work in a virtual environment. So this is something that was, let's say, a real pain for us, the L&D team, during the first part of the crisis, and we really put a lot of effort into, let's say, making things work for us, first of all, and then for the participants. You remember that as you hear in the airplane, you first need to put your own mask and then help others to put their own masks. It was the same thing for us. And eventually what we understood and what we decided to actually do in our L&D strategy were four things, four very simple things. We decided to be present. So this means that we need to be able to help our employees with learning offers that are dedicated to their needs. So for that, we put into practice on a heavy pace our consultancy process. The second thing was we needed to be meaningful. And this means that we needed to actually be able to get out there in the market new content on growth, on resilience, on creativity, or emotional intelligence, and so on and so forth. Third thing, we understood that we need to be connected. So we need to maximize the potential of learning and development initiatives by connecting them with other HR initiatives. And last but not least, we needed to be customer-centric, maybe now more than ever. So to take the learner in our focus at the heart of everything, so to be able to provide them with what they really needed, because, and I'll close my intervention with this, because during these times, learning in digital is more precise than ever.
Okay, excellent. And it was interesting what you were sort of elaborating on now. And I want to come to Roxana on this, and just I want to sort of touch on Florian's last point about becoming customer centric, because I guess that's quite interesting that with all the emotion that we've been talking about in the first session and starting to touch on that, I guess there's become the customer's reaction is probably, or customer feedback is getting a little bit better, because we're learning more about empathy as well. So there's kind of like a domino effect, I guess. Maybe it's just a nice thought or a nice dream, but maybe that is happening. You know, Roxana, in terms of ADP, what is, you know, in terms of, I think Florian said old habits into new practices. What's happening at ADP in terms of, you know, what's changed, and what are the new ways of learning for you, or new ways of learning that you're learning at ADP? I think there's 3 questions for you.
Yeah, I saw. Colin, you have the gift to put a lot of questions once. So first of all, I would like to say that I'm very happy to be here together with you. And I would like to state from the beginning that I'm somehow a person, like a bridge between L&D, so learning and development, and operations, because I'm a talent coach. So I'm with one of my feet, let's say, in the L&D area, as I'm facilitating sessions for the L&D, and I'm collaborating a lot with the L&D team. And on the other side, I'm with one foot in the operations, and I'm building this bridge using coaching, as I'm a coach. And I was happy to hear that coaching was on the lips of the previous speakers and the ladies that were mentioning so often this word, because I mean, my heart was so growing, you know, while they were speaking. So now coming back to your 3 questions, and I already forgot what they were, but I hope I will manage to answer. Well, first of all, in ADP, what we did and what changed in the approach is the fact that we simplify a lot the learning, we shorten the learning, you know, and we help our people be, let's say, realistic when they approach learning. So our programs became shorter. They embed a lot of elements that help the learner really acquire fast information, like visuals, auditory, kinesthetic things, or things that we know already that help people learn fast. We embed a lot of brain science into our learning. And I think that's also a trend, and it's something important to consider for the future, because the latest scientifically discoveries about how our brain works and the patterns that we develop can help us in the learning field to really speed up the learning process of people. Because, you know, it's like we are in a way headwired, let's say. So it's something that is back to basics for the humankind, you know, and the rational part of us, it's just developed in the last some hundreds of years, let's say. I don't have the exact data, so I don't want to say things that are not real. And the reality is that the more we understand how we work and how we learn and how we think and how the patterns are formed, the faster we can become in offering learning opportunities that really, let's say, tie into that very fast. Now, you mentioned the client. A way that we do, or we started to pilot, let's say, during this time, in order to impact the relationship with the client, is to build the bridge between tools that we promote during the soft skills sessions. And I'm so happy that during this pandemic time, I think the focus on the soft skills increased a lot, and on emotional intelligence. And I see that my colleagues are saying yes, yes, yes. And I heard this also in the
Everybody's
first session.
nodding, yeah.
Yeah, everybody's nodding. And because I think the pandemic made us realize that in the corporate world, we were too much into the logics and the details and, you know, the hard things. And we somehow missed to equip or to put the right lens, let's say, because we were offering soft skills trainings prior to that too. But I think the lens was less on that rather than on the hard skills sessions. And this increased now. And actually this helped, I think, our colleagues, you know, dive and move through, as Florine said, through the crisis, because we needed those skills to be able to survive, let's say, or to become new persons out of this situation. With the clients, well, the effect was huge, because what we are piloting now, we take these soft skills from the the tools actually from the soft skills trainings, and then we create short bits of learning of 30 minutes to maximum 1 hour, where we go into the focus on that specific tool. Let's zoom in. What this tool is actually saying. How can you see this tool into practice? So this is where coaching comes in, you know. How would this apply to you? How are you doing things now? What would you change? How would you change? How much time do you need to actually change? Because we already know that we are formed out of, you know, our own patterns and habits and routines. So changing things, the way you do things, it's not quite an easy job to do. I mean, you really need to take some time and have an intention and work on that consciously, decide to do that daily for a few days, let's say 60 or more than 60 days in a row, that it becomes a new habit, okay? So we take these tools, we connect with coaching on the operations. Then we take real operational scenarios. Hey, what are you actually dealing with in your operational daily life, you know? What are the interactions you have with the client? Now, let's look at this tool. How could this tool help you with these interactions? And I use a lot this coaching, and this is the approach we use. And we do programs like that take 3 to 4 months. And this is what we started to pilot during this. And we saw a lot of improvements. First of all, people say, and we measure that before and after, you know, and people say they shifted mindsets, behaviors, their self-confidence improved, they are more resilient, they are better equipped to communicate with the clients. And of course, the NPS scores improve. So our client says, yeah, you're doing a great job. We really appreciate how ADP is, you know, accompanying us along this journey, and we are all in this together. So we all feel like we are in the same boat, you know. Okay. I hope I managed to answer. I don't know. Did I miss any question?
You did. I've actually forgotten what my question was.
Okay. Well,
Thank you very much for that. And it's kind of, I'm going to come to Mirella. Mirella, the first thing I'm going to ask you is just to describe very briefly what Avocado by Best Jobs is, and really sort of touch on in terms of, you know, when companies are looking for programs, looking for things to do. Some of them are lucky enough to have, like the panelists we've got today within the organization. Some don't, so they're obviously looking to perhaps outsource that. So tell us about, you know, in terms of programs. I know you have many on your platform, I think, if I've done my homework correctly, and maybe just some examples of what people are really looking at right now. But tell us quickly about Avocado, because I know what an avocado is, but I don't know what your company is.
Hello, Colin, and hello to everyone. Thank you for the invitation. Avocado by Best Jobs is a personalized learning platform that facilitates access to over 115 coaches, mentors, and therapists through one-to-one video sessions. It is used both for personal use as well as an L&D solution or employee learning benefit for companies. And it's based on an accessible monthly subscription. You asked me what is happening, no? And what people are choosing on Avocado.
What is it? Are they, because there's always this, I'll add a little bit to the question. I guess there's always this danger of, let's call it checkbox training, where kind of people, you know, companies could be putting people through a training program. Let's say, you know, you've been through a negotiation skills course, I'm going to check you off, but that doesn't mean that is good at negotiations, of course. It just means that they've either survived or got through a training course. So what is it that companies are coming to you with? What are the sort of hot spots for them, and why?
Well, as you said about training, I remember that our biggest challenge was to make the switch from training to coaching or to mentoring, because I think Roxana understands me very well when I say that, because she's a coach. What we saw from our experience in communicating with managers from big companies is that there is a need to keep the engagement of employees, to keep the retention rate at a decent level. So they are choosing outsourced learning platforms like Avocado to develop soft skills, like you said in previous session, like communication skills, people skills, empathy, and so on. So because as you discussed in previous session, some employees may feel overlooked and isolated in these times. For others, it's harder to build team spirit from the distance, or to peer-to-peer connections to manage people. So many companies are choosing as a benefit for their employees coaching or therapy to develop these soft skills. And of course, if we talk about hard skills, a mentor can make the difference. And the profile, I don't know if you asked me about the profile of the employee who is the beneficiary of these programs, as we saw, is from middle to top management, but also operational departments are involved. Mostly the key people from the companies, or the ones who are in a new role and have to deal with a new unknown situation, they are the beneficiary.
Okay, interesting. And Andrea, I'm going to bring you in, if I may, finally on this point. And I'm going to sort of like to, you know, touch on with ACCA. You're already been teaching, and people have been learning from ACCA and taking qualifications for many years. Before I ask you a question, I just want to read this question, and Cosmina Koman, and I do apologize for delaying responding to this, but it says, the Learning and Development Global Sentiment Survey 2021, done by Donald H. Taylor, sounds like a very refined gentleman, the chair of the Learning and Performance Institute in 95 countries, has revealed as well the reskilling and upskilling as the hottest topic in the L&D agenda. How do you think this new urgency will shift the L&D influence in organizations, and is the L&D function prepared to take a more strategic role. I guess it's kind of touching a little bit what I kind of almost sarcastically touched on there about checkbox training, etc. But the learning and development role has taken on, we're talking about learning and developing people and taking responsibility. But let's touch on that learning and development department. Their life is changing, I think, Andrea. And my second question, don't worry, there's just two, is really to share from your experiences, slightly off subject, but I know you want to share something with us in terms of, when people do take qualifications, which a lot of companies are offering qualification or upskilling to their people, how that's now managed. And I think I've sort of rounded the question correctly, but I think you're going to show us a little bit on that. Did I ask the question well? Andrea.
Colin, no worries. So first of all, very, very nice being here. Hello, everyone. Hello to everybody listening. And hello, Colin. Don't worry, I was taking notes because I know you so well for so long. Okay. So hopefully I'm going to touch on all points. So first of all, thank you to Cosmina for the question. I'll try to answer it as well as I can, given the fact that in ACCA, myself and my colleagues, we do talk to L&D departments a lot. So we'll be able to give this view of the practical experience. And then because ACCA at a global level is also approaching L&D departments as well, we'll be able to give, let's say, higher level global view. So first of all, in ACCA, we have this broad range of resources that we can tackle. More precisely, we have some 800,000 members and students around the world who are being dealt with by their respective L&D departments. And besides the fact that we are responsible for their continuous training and for the fact that they will have to pass our very difficult exams, we also ask them constantly what they want from their professional association, what they want from a qualification, what they want from their L&D department. So since 2018, we've had a global survey, which is called The Future of Learning. And of course, it was restricted, so to say, to professional accountants. But I think given the fact that, as I was saying, it was about the interaction that they had with L&D, also it's relevant to your question. So since 2018, we could see 4 trends in this learning environment. And I think the pandemic did not contradict them, but actually it came to exacerbate them. So we were saying, first of all, of course, technology is going to be all prevalent, and I'll have some more comments on that. We'll have an ever-changing workplace. And in terms of this, it's not only accounting we were referring to, but L&D. And what I mean is that from the conclusions of the survey, and what we're seeing is that, well, the workplace, even from 2018, when we had that survey, was really very fast evolving. So we had a flatter company whereby people could just go to the CEO and suggest something. I really like that it was the case in the previous discussion panel that people were mentioning that, well, CEOs and juniors are coming together to get their training. Then the flexibility of careers, and you mentioned, Colin, I loved your accountant becoming a marketing professional. Of course, accountants can become whatever they want. Since you know how money works in a company, you'll be able to become whatever you want. And then, and which is something very relevant to your question, is we found that people were talking about self-curated learning ever since 2018. But for that, they need a mentor, a coach. And I think this is the role of the L&D function. And yes, I think it's a pivotal function. I think it's like a guiding light, let's say, and they also need to adapt and they were forced, let's say, to adapt just like we were during these times. Now, on to your second question about how qualifications are faring in this time. Again, because we are responsible for all these people around the world for their training and development, we were already pretty much moved online. A lot of our trainings, a lot of our communication, everything was online. However, at the beginning of last year, what was supposed to be a 5-year project of moving all of our exams online became suddenly a 3-month project. So I think after 3 sessions of organizing remotely invigilated exams, which is basically people sitting in their homes in front of their laptops, passing what are very, very, very strict exams and very difficult. What I can honestly say is that that has been learning and development experience for us, for ACCA. It was very fast learning. We learned how to communicate better, to just burn stages, and exactly as I was mentioning, not necessarily keep in mind so much positions and hierarchies, but just focus on getting the job done. Once we had done that, and we have made all our research of how to do it and what's the best partner that could help us implement these remotely invigilated exams, once we were doing that, now we were surprised to see that there was more reluctance from people to adapt and to adopt actually this type of exams than we had envisaged. Okay. So it was another journey to communicate to people and how to encourage them to sit such exams, because that's the disconnect. So we are talking a lot about digital for forever, since we know each other, and even before. We're talking a lot about digital, how it's transforming, but ask people to have someone supervising them on their computer through the camera and them passing an exam, and you just open another type of Pandora's box. So it came to us that we needed to communicate in a certain way, and we needed to be more persuasive. So that was another journey, but in the end we have thousands of people sitting this exam, so that was really interesting. Okay. I'm sure I get another question from you. So
I'm sure you will. I'm going to blend your thoughts into a question for Florian. So I want to sort of stay on this autonomous learning, as it's called, really the challenges of it. And Florian, Andrea sort of touched on there in terms of examinations, which is the hard thing. And I guess she's kind of touched on there that if people start feeling like they're back at school, you're going to get a little bit more resistance. So the psychological part of doing that. But in terms of tracking people of what they're doing and the development work, that must be, as we talked about you as the head of Orange Learning and Development. Your life has changed a little bit, I think, my friend, over the few months, and will continue to change. How are you managing that in terms of avoiding that checkbox training, making sure that the people who are learning autonomously or distantly are doing the right things? So that's one question, and I have to give you another question because Andrea told me that's what I do every time. Second question would be, in terms of, what's the question? Is it easier to, let's say, talking exam terminology, is it easier to pass when you're doing something online as opposed to being in the classroom? And what impact does that have on the real learning of that individual? There you go. There's a controversial question for you, Florian.
Well, thanks, Colin, for 2 questions. I'll provide you with only one answer, but I promise I'll make it a big one.
Okay.
Well, to be honest, the first thing I considered, and we together with the team, we consider that we need to do in order to be able to manage this kind of autonomous learning and to be impactful in the lives of our employees, was to take let's say, a new set of paradigms, taking into account the new context that we are being part of. And I'll just mention three new beliefs that we have. I mean, to be really honest, we we used to have this kind of beliefs before the pandemic, but now we didn't have any room to avoid them anymore. So we needed to take them in. So first of all is that we really need to embrace the less is more principle when it comes to digital learning. So people really need good advice and curation. There is plenty of content all over the walls. There is plenty of information. People don't have time to look for the most important one and the best one. So this is the first belief that we needed to embark. Now, the second one is that the new approach in learning needs is to focus on two key elements: micro skills and systemic learning. And here, I imagine that probably Roxana completely agrees with me that whenever you're having this kind of a systemic approach on every kind of training, the impact and the effect of it will appear faster and stronger. And I'll give you just one small example. It's one thing to have in a training room, virtual one, people coming from all sorts of teams in a mixed group, which is a metaphor. So people will always need to think of how they will apply the concepts in their own teams. And it's another thing to have in the training room the team and its manager all together. Again, we need to focus on what we can really teach during those 2, 3, or 4 hours of digital learning, and we don't have any more time, let's say, to fill in with facilitated discussion or any other types of exercises that we are accustomed with from our past practice. And let's say the third approach that we needed to take into account was that we really need to measure the impact. So it's not only about measuring the NPS, it's not only about measuring the attendance rate and so on and so forth. It's also about measuring the degree, the extent to which people are really taking it and putting it into practice in their own daily activity, daily life. So these were thoughts that really, let's say, dived in our heads as L&D professionals. And then we realized that we need to actually find a solution. And now I'm getting to your second question, find the solution to actually track and measure and make sure that people are, let's say, passing. It's not people passing the exam, it's actually making the difference, helping them be better, because that's actually the main mission of learning and coaching, if I may, although I'm not a coach, is to maximize the potential of people towards their desired results. Absolutely. You know, so how to do that? And here I'm really proud to mention that we were really inspired to build a new system of engagement, which we called it team culture process. And we made some slight modifications of our former process. First of all, and I'll just give you the concrete modifications, was that instead of having a survey every 6 months, which scientifically is not very valid, we decided to make it dynamic, and people would answer to some surveys every 2 weeks. So people are on a continuous feedback loop. And the second modification that we made was that we gave up on those surveys where usually people are evaluating their own manager, you know, and the manager is responsible for the communication, for the clarity, for the purpose, and so on and so forth. So we changed that and we transformed the surveys. We put them at the first person. So people would evaluate themselves. They wouldn't evaluate anyone else. They would evaluate themselves, but we put let's say, surprise there. The behaviors that the managers would evaluate themselves on and the behaviors that the team members would evaluate themselves on are mirroring one another. So the thing that the manager is doing should provoke an effect in the team members. If they are congruent, if they are meeting, then it seems that the manager is not only preaching stuff, he's actually doing stuff. So this was the method that we chose to actually track and make sure that people are passing and that they are getting as much as possible from the learning. And I would mention one more thing because it was a thought that stood with me related to Cosmina's question, and it connects to the first part of your question. we needed as an L&D team to change the paradigm and to replace the learning consultancy perspective with the performance consultancy perspective. We are not investigating anymore learning needs. We are investigating performance gaps. And this made us to actually become more strategic. And I'll just give you an example on how we did it. Obviously, reskilling and upskilling are the new stars of 2021 and not only. But we needed to see the higher context that these two methodologies should be part of. And surprise, surprise, strategic workforce planning. But not only that, we as an L&D team, we realized that we need to be owners on strategic workforce planning and development. So we need to make it not only a planification exercise, but a dynamic developmental exercise.
Okay. Interesting. I like it. Learn good advice. Go from a learning mindset to a performance mindset, and getting that message across is a little bit better. Roxana, if I can come to you in terms of life, with micro learning and L&D programs, etc. at ADP. But I want to touch on something that kind of got me thinking there. Was about we talk about. I asked a controversial question: is it easier to get through a training online than offline? I guess we're still kind of in that learning the answer to that, I guess. But in terms of introverts, I think there is a statistic that Romania has a high percentage of introverts within the country, and I've certainly experienced that myself. I would say it's probably 70% introverts and 30% extroverts, as opposed to the UK, which is unfortunately the other way around. But I won't go into that. But just on this, if you're a young introverted professional within ADP or within a company, I guess online learning is going to be more beneficial in terms of less exposure. So my question to you is this form of learning going to last for a long time, even when, and we all hope and pray that COVID is a long distant memory, but are there going to be certain people who are going to really want to continue the online because it helps them develop quicker, it's less exposure, and they will actually be the acceleration of their development maybe enhanced because of, I'm not saying thank you to COVID, but it's kind of as a result of it. So Roxana.
Well, in my view, and that's a personal view, there is no one size fits all. And I think that whatever shifts happen during those times will continue to exist because, we are so different and unique in our own ways. And we choose what fits best for us to learn, to grow, and yeah, introverts for sure are more happy with the online learning. I'm an extrovert, you can see, right? so
no,
Colin, no. And as an extrovert, I suffered in the beginning because I was missing the classroom, interacting with people, being there under the spotlight and stuff like that. So it was really, really painful for me as an associate learning. So not in my position as a coach. But in the same time, I personally took courses online, and I loved it. I had a great experience with that because, as I said, more and more this type of courses evolve. They are not dull, they are not boring anymore. There is a lot of interactive content. You have to really put your mind to work. So it depends, of course, on the type of course, but I think that there is a lot of innovation in the way we put the content together. And that's also something that was, let's say, brought to the surface by this pandemic because people had to reinvent themselves. And in the L&D, my colleagues from L&D, they had to become better in providing us with the content that keeps us close to the computer, is not too long to be also accessible for us. It also brings value, and something that, makes that click in your head and say, yeah, I would love to apply that. That for certain can help me, So I would say that whatever trends started now, they will continue. Plus, we have everything that was mentioned earlier with the digital learning, blended learning, artificial intelligence, robots supporting that and everything. Well, this will be continuing to increase, And just to give you an example, because Florin mentioned earlier that, the L&D, they are looking very closely to how to close the gaps. Well, I would say that in ADP, next to doing that, we do something even more interesting, I hope, for you all. We bring the lens of strengths. And we have a very powerful program that it's developed by ADP together with Marcus Buckingham. It's Standout. And this program actually is bringing the lens on our strengths. And the way we do that, well, we partner with the technology. We have an app that supports us in in making self-journaling, self-reflection, taking a look on how we work, what we love doing, how we prefer to work, what needs and gaps we have, of course, what type of support we need from the leader. We have even bits of coaching done by the app. So the apps comes to you and gives you tips and tricks on how you could become, more effective in the way you work. And of course, at the basis of the app, there is also, let's say, an assessment that managed to capture your pattern of thought, feeling, and behavior, and puts you on under the spotlight what you bring as a value and uniqueness somehow in this world. Of course, no test or whatever app will ever be able to capture the whole uniqueness you are, because, well, I don't think we invented something like this. So we are so complex. But in the same time, there is a very good, reference point or balancing point, because studies show that once you are focusing on your strengths and bring your strengths to work instead of looking only on the gaps, you can increase your performance by 700%.
Wow.
So imagine that if you look on your gaps, you improve your performance by 150%. If you look on your strengths and you bring those strengths to cover the gaps, you improve by 700%. Well, that's a huge percentage. And that there are studies behind it. So you can discover that on the internet. Marcus did a great study on that. So yeah, I hope I managed to answer your question.
You did. And you've also confirmed that you're an extrovert. So thank you very much for
if I just may add something onto your question about...
Andrea, I was just going to come to you and then I was coming to Marilla, so fire away, please.
Just to add on what Roxana said, yes, there's no one size fits all. So I'm sure there will still be a blend. However, I don't think we'll fully go back to how we were in terms of, learning and development professionals or, qualification providers, because there was... yeah, you can hear me, I hope.
Yes,
because there was indeed opportunity in adversity for us. So for instance, the types of courses that Roxana was talking about, 15 minutes intervention, 30 minutes intervention, you wouldn't really do that in a face-to-face classroom, because it would take the person half an hour to get there, half an hour to go back. They won't come for 15 minutes. Plus, I'm sure Roxana will be able to sell her services to people in Brazil, of course, if she stays up very late at night. But, it will be something that's, only possible online. So we also discovered this when talking to companies. They were telling us, well, we shifted online. We'll probably keep more of the online. And some of the companies we talked to in a survey last year, they were telling us that they have actually increased their learning. So
well, interesting. And by the way, I don't think Roxana goes to bed at night. I think she parties.
No, yet with Brazil people for sure.
With Brazil, yeah, exactly. Mirella, I want to come to you on this and just sort of twist the subject a little bit, because we've talked a lot in both the sessions really about how, and again, I'm not being sort of ironic with this, but how companies are saying, yes, we really care about our people and we're going to put people first and people development, and we're going to be the best company. And I think that's a goal for any organization. In terms of the balance of that with making the business successful and profitable, what are you seeing in terms of, does it depend who you ask? So if you ask an HR manager who loves their people, you're going to get more sort of the soft skills and I want to do this, do that, and help those introverts be able to stand up at a wedding of their brother next week and make a speech. Or is it no, we need, they're soft, but they're kind of soft, hard skills that we want, because we want people to be better negotiators and better this and better that. What is the reality of what you're seeing from a company? What's the real priority for companies? Is it what we've heard? I think I answered my own question and I asked it again there, but there you go.
Yeah, Colin. Yes, I think there are more than one question here. I was thinking about my colleagues from sales department and how they present the benefits from coaching programs, and how they convince companies to invest in coaching or mentoring or therapy for their employees. And I think they are talking a lot regarding the effectiveness of these programs, and the challenge. I would like to discuss a little bit of the challenge is to who sets the goal when the beneficiary of a coaching program is an employee. The manager wants to have control and to see the value of the program in the employee's performance, which further reflects in team performance or the organization performance. But in reality, you can't have control over someone else's fears or piece of development. We and our coaches from our communities and my colleagues from sales department highly recommend our clients to have open discussions between managers and employees, beneficiaries of coaching programs, about mutual expectations and goals. Otherwise, the program will not have the expected impact. So I think if I would answer to your question, we are talking very much regarding the impact that a coaching program or a mentoring program will have in a team performance.
I can confirm I'm an internal coach, so you can imagine that I'm I need to put, I don't know how to balance these needs, what the associate wants and what the leader wants from that person.
Yeah. Mirella, I'm going to come back to you, but Andrea, can I just come to you on this? Because, ACCA is offering development qualifications, the best, I can say, on your behalf, qualifications out there, which becomes either a personal cost, so I could probably pay to join ACCA and take the qualifications as part of my career drive, or I work for a company that pays that for me. On the latter, I guess organizations, and it's already been touched on, I want something back for my dollar. How do we sort of help to create that buy-in, not just for the recipient of the training, but also for the organization as well? Are they willing to invest? And I think Mirella touched on the salesperson there, or Roxana did. I'm a sales manager, and I say, "Where's Colin? Oh, he's on a training course. He's learning how to have emotional intelligence with his clients." I want him out selling. I want him out selling. So how do we get that balance? What is what's the advice for people? Is it, say, just be patient, or is there a way that we can, and I come to Roxana on this actually, we can amplify or speed up the process of learning and get people in the right shape so they can continue to satisfy the needs of the business?
Yeah. Thank you, Colin. So I'll take it and then pass it on to Roxana. I think, well, first of all, thank you for saying it on my behalf that ACCA is the best. So I'm not shy at all about saying it. And since it's the truth and it can be supported with numbers, I'm actually very proud to say that. So yes, from our experience in talking to companies, we did see, and also because we are accountants, so they're asking, what's my return on investment? So they love asking that to us. So from our experience in dealing with CFOs mainly, because it's them who are deciding and they are our advocate with the learning and development department, they are telling us that they are seeing more productivity, people who are more accurate in their forecast, in what they say, in what they are discussing in meetings. And I actually have a real example, which I just discussed recently with one of our partner employers, who are saying, Well, actually, after we trained all of our department on a diploma by ACCA on international financial reporting, we were able to pay a very much smaller fee to our external accountant who was helping us with reconciling to IFRS, because our internal department was able to do that. So of course now not all companies can afford to pay an ACCA training, or they can't afford to allow their people to the time to sit ACCA exams. So that's why, well, they will go to an external company who has these trained professionals, and they will pay for their services.
Okay. Roxana, I'm going to say very quickly, not because you're an extrovert, but very quickly because time is against us. Very quickly, what are you doing? What are you doing there at ADP in terms of accelerating that process? So the heads of ADP are satisfied with the investment, but we're still keeping the business flowing.
Yeah, so I think it's a blend of all that I said earlier and plus some other things. So first of all, the way we teach very short bits of learning, then how we coach on that learning and make sure that people actually start as of tomorrow to apply that and to practice that daily, Then we have the self-awareness tool that is really powerful, because with self-awareness comes the desire to change and be better. Otherwise, you are just in your bubble and that's it, And we have also the self-care that is really important, because everything starts with you as an individual. So if you don't take care of yourself, you don't sleep well, you don't eat well, you are not mindful on how you spend your time, you are all the time in that, oh, I have to do routine, I have to do pressure, and pressure is everywhere and all around us. And we already know that in the brain chemistry, stress, it's very damaging, because we release a lot of cortisol, and cortisol is not a healthy hormone for our body. So we need to be mindful that no matter how much as leaders we want people to really get results fast and as very, very good ones, there is some buffer zone that exists into there, we need to have that buffer zone for that person to actually, lay down on the knowledge and bring that type of self-awareness in the way he applies that knowledge. So learning is it's a journey, and it's like a seed that you grow in the earth, in the ground.
Absolutely. And I guess the word journey is an appropriate one, that we're all on a journey ourselves anyway, aren't we? So we're coming towards the last 5 minutes. Florian, I want to come to you. I want to fly the Romanian flag for a little bit, if I may. Because we've had some great discussion, and thank you for everybody who's contributed. I have to say, we did have a question on there. We'll get back to you, my friend, on that. Who's Boulon? I think Boulon. I can't pronounce the name, but we'll come back to you on that question. But Florian, very quickly about Romania, because we've talked about these programs. We've talked about the challenges of what happened with COVID. Even without COVID, learning and development is evolving anyway, without that happening to us. My question to you, Florian, is do you think, is Romania unique in its positive way that it's approaching? And that's what I've heard throughout these last 2 hours, is a real sort of positive message and a confident message. Are we unique, working for a multinational company as you do? And if we are, what is it about the Romanian psyche that makes it more adaptable and adopting of things like this?
Well, Colin, I really hope we are not unique. I hope others are. I hope others are special too.
Very benevolent of you, but let's hope.
Yeah. Let's say from a corporate point of view, I guess that this is the only choice. I mean, to keep it positive and optimistic. But here I would just lay a small stress, because I think in the corporate world, things are a bit different than the entrepreneurial or other environments. And I guess that this is the same for other cultures as well, for other countries too. I really think that the corporate entity, either it's a multinational or a big company, you name it, I don't think that its mission in life is to search for the happiness of its employees. And probably many people will just argue with me and they will be like, whoa. No, I think that happiness is an individual is an individual, let's say, continuous search in a favorable environment. And I guess that this is our main mission. So at Orange, what we did in order to keep it optimistic, to keep it genuine, is that we focused on two main elements. The first one is to make sure that every employee feels part of a winning team. And when I say a winning team, I mean teams that are really delivering on their results and their objectives, and they are really happy and proud of what they are achieving. And another focus that we have is to make sure that people really develop. And when I say develop, I mean more than skills and competencies and so on and so forth. I mean that they are really, they have the opportunity to tap into their own potential and make the best out of it. So this was something that really helped us to put forth to our employees all sorts of programs, all sorts of methodologies, from coaching, peer learning groups, and more methodologies. So to be able to accompany them in their effort during this pandemic. So I think we all put effort into building the best possible environment. And I think that in face of everything they have, everybody should be able to choose. I guess that the worst thing that may happen would be that people wouldn't have the possibility to choose. That would be the worst case scenario, in my opinion.
And it's a great way to sort of wrap things up. And I did see a couple of your colleagues in a panel nodding their heads. So let's just say that you spoke on behalf of everybody, and some great messages coming through there about, you know, it is in transition still. So let's not set everything in stone. We're still learning. We're still picking up data out there. We're learning about people working from home and the impact, positive and negative, on them, and the emotional intelligence that's required. I think we also understood we've got to keep an eye on the business as well. We can't be too emotional and too benevolent. We still have a business to run, or our bosses still have a business to run. So a bit of reality there as well. But it's sad to end this, because I think we could go on for another hour or so. But I would like to thank, from session one, Theodora, Denisa, and Roxana. And from this session, thank you very much indeed, Andrea, Roxana, Florine, Mirella, and I guess I'll thank myself, but I'd like to thank Mirella and the Diplomat team for putting on today. I hope to get a WhatsApp message from her afterwards. She's very unemotional, so I may get that was okay, which to me means that was absolutely brilliant. But I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, everybody online, everybody who was following us on Facebook and YouTube. And Mirella, final word from you.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you very much. Thank you to all our speakers and partners. Stay safe, and see you at the next events organized by the Diplomat. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mirella. Thank you, Colin.
Goodbye.
Bye.